My name is Joris Peels, and this is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled. And for today, well, I really want to talk to you about a couple of things. And one thing is something that I've been noticing. This has to do with 3D printing conferences. So first off, I work for 3dprint.com. We have our own conference, it's the Additive Manufacturing Strategy Conference. That's going to be in February 6th. 2024 in New York, right? Now, that is a conference that is about the business of additive manufacturing. It's about the economics. It's about major strides forward and making parts possible and making business models possible. It's got some tech stuff from space and dental and medical and stuff like that. And we're trying to make our own very much kind of our own little conference. Now, I need to tell you this. Of course, it's nice to promote our own conference because it's also provided to us, of course, thanks to 3dprint.com. But at the same time, I want to tell you this with why I'm kind of so fascinated with 3D printing conferences and the subject that I want to discuss with you. And that's just, the next thing is that I've noticed something. Now, at one point, a couple of years ago, well, first we had a Euromold and just the traditional old school 3D printing conferences that have been going on for a long time, right? Then there was a time when there was a bunch of people competing to each be the definitive series of 3D printing conferences. A lot of really big companies in the conference world and stuff like that, kind of slugging it out. Now, then subsequently, we saw a whole bunch of different conferences in different verticals, like medical conferences and like 3D printing Southern Europe and 3D printing for Paris and all that. Now, of those, and I just looked back a whole list of the ones there used to be, of those, a lot of them have died and a lot of them have gone away right now. Now, what we're seeing now is the emergence of a new set of regional and national conferences. So I was reading some news, and there's the Norwegian Additive Manufacturing Cluster, Norwegian AM, which just got started only in 2022, just did a conference in March 22 to 21st to 22nd last week. So we got 117 people, and it was kind of like, the Norwegian AM interested world. So it's a quite small conference, but super focused, Now, Dansk AM Hub, right, the Danish variant of the Norwegian Additive Manufacturing Cluster, they have their own conference. They've been doing this for a couple of years. It's just everyone, like most of the stuff I think is in Danish. There's some people from outside, but it's like the whole Danish additive manufacturing world is there, right? In the Netherlands, there's a conference organized near Eindhoven in the south of the Netherlands, which is kind of like that. It's like the chance to see the whole Dutch AM world. Right? And very few people outside. Like, it's not like Stratasys shows up for that show. It's like the local resellers of Stratasys and Ultimate and all these guys, and everybody shows up, and it's kind of like they come like the whole industry for that country together. There's also this new additive manufacturing ripensare I processi industriali per la produzione del futuro, right? Which I'm mispronouncing, and if you're Italian, I apologize, but that's an Italian conference. The entire the marketing is in Italian. It's organized by Chilometro Rosso and Tecnoli Meccaniche, right? And these are another conferences that are organized by local parties for local people with the local AM industry. So my theory here is that, wait a minute, are these the conferences that are going to be successful? So that we're going to have, like, for example, a couple of, in the countries where 3D printing is strong, we're going to have a couple of local conferences. Like, for example, in Germany, we don't really have that. There's a conference in Erfurt. There's, of course, Forum Next. So there's no definitive German conference, right? Because the Forum Next, but apart from Forum Next, which is kind of a more international one. Meanwhile, so there's local conferences. And now, meanwhile, you've got Rapid, you've got IMTS every couple of years, you've got Forum Next. They're kind of duking it out to be like the #1 conference in the world. Now, I think we're all in agreement right now that Forum Next is that one global conference. If you need to go to one 3D printing conference in the year, go there, right? But it looks like that's the one big global event. And then if you're really interested in North America, or if you're North American based, or you want to do business there, you also go to Rapid, right? Meanwhile, in Asia, the situation isn't as clear, right? I know there's a bunch of conferences there's a bunch in Japan, there's a bunch in China, there's a couple of other ones in other countries. For people that are located in Europe, like myself, there hasn't been one big enough to really entice me to say, oh, you know what, I need to go there as well, right? So there isn't really a winner on the European front or the Asian front. Right. But, what we're trying to do with additive manufacturing strategies, of course, for the business people, for like the CEOs of the big publicly traded companies, for the CEOs of the companies, the big scale up kind of companies, we want to be unmissable for them, So that's where we come in. And then there's also other examples, like a defense oriented event, right? There's going to be a bioprinting event. There's going to be medical events. So we're really seeing a shift. And we're also seeing a shift that we used to go to all the conferences, right? And now people are being really selective. So what I'm thinking is that for most people, they're just going to go to the one national conference, one that's really specific to their technology or vertical, or if they're interested in the military, they go to the military one, or if they're interested in strategy, they go to AMS, right? And then there's going to be forum next. Right, and that's going to be a real whittling down of these kind of things. So one vertical one, and that's kind of like what I think most people, and also this is like, check this with people, like, where are you going? And they seem to either want to go in deep with like something like they're really interested in, or they're really active in, as we've expanded to more verticals, or at the same time, these people want to be kind of, much more nationally oriented, or they want to meet all the leaders in the world, which is what you do at Forum Next. Anyway, so I've just been thinking about that. I thought that was kind of something interesting to share with you. The next thing I want to talk about is this was large scale composite 3D printing. So large scale composites is something that has been going on for an awful long time. People are working on this for drone components, for bike parts, consumer goods. We're seeing a lot of aerospace composite activity, and there's lots of different ways to do this, right? Taking 9T labs, impossible objects. And now there's another way that's kind of something we've been seeing before, and a lot of people are playing with this, including the guys at CEAD, together with GCAN. And GCAN's a really large manufacturer. They make a lot of aerospace components. They make a lot of components for Airbus and aircraft and in general. And they've come up with something called Advanced Tape Layer Additive Manufacturing, ATLAM. Now, ATLAM is one of a few processes that are looking at the same thing. There's a thing called automatic fiber placement, and there's like 3D printing. How do you combine that, right? The automatic fiber placement is really great at placing a particular directional fiber in a particular orientation, right? And 3D printing is really great at extruding stuff. Now, combining the two is where these guys hope to really see some gains. So what they want to do, the TUM, and Technical University of Munich, they installed an ATLAM machine, right? And that's going to be looking at this, how to use a one adjacent nozzle or adjacent continuous nozzle, right? Tape plus 3D printing machine to make, specifically aerospace tooling. There's a 3DP mat project. This is GCAN Munich, working with Hufschmidt Zerspanningssystemen GmbH, and using a CEAD flexball system. Now, the CEAD flexball system, you can mount it on pretty much any robot arm, right? It can do maybe up to 84 kilograms an hour. There's about 100 of these sold for all sorts of different kind of like 3D printing processes. And essentially what it does, it marries the fiber tape orientation and placement with extrusion-based process. Now, the main goal these guys have is something very specific to them. They want to get a better coefficient of thermal expansion, better CTE, because if the CTE, either if you're making tooling, is closer to the CTE of the final part, or generally if you're just making any kind of part in this manner, you're going to get, with a better CTE, you're going to get better tolerances, you're going to get reduced workbench, you're going to get better dimensional stability on your objects, and quality is going to be much easier for you to achieve. Now, the results of this are, so far, these are getting CTE values that are close to the carbon fiber CFRP tools using like CFRP prepreg or INVAR, right? So that market is gigantic. This is a huge market. That, a lot of people think of aerospace tooling. Oh, well, but this is actually huge. So if we can get the same values as we're seeing in INVAR tools, and we're being able to equal those values using a less costly system with less manual labor, now that could be really great. Now, the team so far has found that perhaps they can do the time to tool, if you will. They can reduce that by 500%, which would be huge on a schedule for like a large wide body airline or something like that. And they can cut the cost by at least 50%. So that's a real great, kind of potential for the system, right? And the fact that in this system, everything is combined in one head and kind of like less passes, if you will. And if you get it, because the tape extrusion and the tape placement and the extrusion are co-located, and there's the same IR heat source that preheats the tape and the substrate before putting the tape on top of the extruded layer, right? and then keeps on doing this. It's a really integrated, really, really repeatable type process they could be working on here. And they're working right now on Ultim and PEEK and other kind of things for tooling fixtures. And this is a huge market, right? Because these Tom Munich guys and also the GKN in Munich, they work on parts for the Airbus family. They make their own flaps. So they make tooling for flaps for making flaps for the aircraft for Airbus. So that is a huge application. I think this is a really wonderful story. I think it's a really great success story. And there's a market there that, a lot of people aren't really familiar with, but it is gigantic. So this is just something I wanted to talk about as well. And the next thing is, well, it has to do with boxing gloves, or actually kind of more MMA gloves, actually, if you're thinking about it. There's a company called Hayabusa, which is actually based in Kingston, Ontario, and they're selling $159 3D printed boxing gloves or mixed martial arts, kind of jujitsu gloves. They're called T3D. They use a lattice structure, a 3D printed photopolymer lattice structure, and traditional foam type of things, marrying the two together, and what's called complementary manufacturing. Now, we don't know. Okay. So normally, this kind of thing, lattices, right, of a vat polymerization material, resin, right, photopolymer in a sports equipment thing. I'm automatically already thinking of the guys. Carbon, right? This is very much carbon, right? They also have a thing. They have a zonal kind of zonal cushioning kind of approach, where you have different cushioning at different parts of the glove, which is very similar to some of the backpacks that the guys Uxler and Carbon did for Jack Wolfskin, where they have zonal cooling and stuff like this. So I almost guarantee. I was like looking at this thing. Yeah, this is probably carbon, but at the same time, there's no mention of carbon. Carbon is all about like getting their name intertwined with these projects. So maybe it's like they're using P3, they're using Origin or Stratasys' Origin technology plus a Henkel, kind of solution or something like that, or maybe something else. We don't know. There's no material supplier or company disclosed at this time. Their idea is to use better impact, to use better protection. And I think this is a fantastic application. This is one I'd never considered. Never in my life did I think of sporting goods. Never. Or sporting goods, yes, but boxing gloves, never. So this is absolutely a fantastic one. So I do think there's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity here in helmets, handlebars, handles of sports equipment, tennis rackets, and golf clubs, that kind of thing. And there's so much potential there with these kind of programmable lattices and these programmable surfaces and programmable textures and stuff like that. So I think that's a huge, huge, huge potential. All right, my name is Joris Peels. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful today. This was 3D Printing News Unpeeled, brought to us from 3D Print.